All right, so next franchise. We finished Species, so let's look at another creature, The Fly. We're gonna go through all five of these movies. Yes, I'm gonna redo the Cronenberg Fly just because I feel like it needs an update. I did it last year, but I feel like I should do it again. So we're gonna go through the Fly franchise, starting with the original 1958 Fly, which is the first watch for me. The reason I'm doing this is I decided, like very last minute, like this morning, I'm going to be doing a ranking of all the Shout/Scream Factory. I'm gonna call it Scream and Shout ranking. Just all something fun to do. Of all the Scream and Shout Factory releases that I have. That includes these Critters, the two Tales from the Crypt movies, all the Scream Factories I've collected, the first two Bill and Ted movies that are in the Scream Factory collection, and some of the Halloween movies. I think it's Halloween 4, and the two Rob Zombie movies are the only ones in that collection that aren't Scream Factory. So, hey, might be a more happier ranking. But to do that, I have to go through these. So we're going to talk about the original Fly from 1958. And I was actually surprised watching this. I actually enjoyed myself. I'm one of those where it's like older movies sometimes aren't for me. I mean, I grew up with AMC and there's older films. I watched Psycho, which I love. And I was also surprised that it was in color. I didn't realize that because look at the back. It's black and white. I guess this is a color restoration version. So this movie, The Fly, stars David Hedison, or who is credited as Al Hedison, because that's his real name, but he was working on a TV show, and they said that Al wasn't a good enough name, I guess. So he's David Hedison, who played Felix Leiter in two Bond movies, Live and Let Die, and License to Kill. He shares the screen. Well, he doesn't actually share the screen, but also stars Patricia Owens as the wife, Helene, which is one of the weirdest old-fashioned names I've ever heard. Hedison plays Andre Delambre. Patricia Owens plays his wife, Helene. Vincent Price, the late great Vincent Price, plays Delambre's brother, Francois. And we also have I'm assuming that Herbert Marshall plays Inspector Sharas. So, what I found intriguing about this is that, well, there is a build-up. So, I'm going to do original versus remake later, but I'm just going to briefly say that with Cronenberg's Fly was all about the disintegration of the character and how he is changing and mutating. This one is not so much. We start off and we see someone is in a press and his head and one of his hands is in the press and there's blood, which is surprising for 1958 because Alfred Hitchcock, he did Psycho in black and white so that the MPAA wouldn't go nuts on him for the blood. So it's weird that 2 years earlier they allowed this, So, yeah, and so the whole film is basically trying to piece together what happened. You get Helene calling Francois, and as Vincent Price is, he's just sitting at his desk in his smoking jacket, smoking, and he takes the phone call, and she admits to killing her husband, Andre, his brother. And so he hurries up and goes over there, and with the Inspector Sharas, and she admits to it. She admits that she does it, and she's gonna have to go to jail. They have a son named Philippe. Are they supposed to be French? Because not one of them. They say a few French words here and there, and I think Sharas has a bit of a French accent. But other than that, they don't seem French. Andre, Francois, Helene, very Philippe, very French names. Sharas, I'm just saying. But, yeah, so she tells him, then he didn't kill him. And she keeps talking about this special fly with a white head and a white leg or feeler, whatever you want to call it. And even the son says that he saw it. And one thing I do want to call it here is, yes, you're going to go into a movie like this, and there's going to be acting that is very much of the time. Especially the kid. The kid in this, it reminded me of, the Andy Griffith Show, and you got Ron Howard's character on there, Opie. Oh, gee, Pa! That's what he sounded like. Although I think he's supposed to be French, but he doesn't have a French accent. But it's a very 50s kid actor thing. And when you're watching old 50s shows and you get 50s kid actors acting like that, Ron Howard learned how to act by the time he get to Happy Days. But back then, I don't know. It's very weird kid acting. But yes, and so there's the fly with the white head. And so she decides, they keep asking her what happened. She goes, I cannot tell you, I just can't. Very 50s acting, I just can't. And finally, Francois gets smart and he says that he found the fly and he has it in his desk, but he won't give it to her, and he won't do anything with it until he tells her. So she tells him the story. So Andre was trying to create a matter transmitter to go from one point to another, just like the remake, only they're little boxes instead of giant pods, but it's more practical for this, I guess. And he's trying to perfect it. He tries to show her with it. I guess it's an ashtray. I thought it was a plate, but I guess it's they say later it's an ashtray. But so it's an ashtray. He puts it in, and it works. But then she points out that the writing is backwards, and I think that's pretty cool because, like, Cronenberg's would have it. He had sheep exploding, whereas this one it's just something very subtle, like "Made in Nepal" spelled backwards, written backwards. So I did that. It's really cool. It's very subtle type thing. It's not in your face. Not now that I do kind of like the in your face stuff, but so as soon as this happens, she starts writing stuff down, and but he's still in a good mood because it still sort of worked, and he takes her to the opera, right, or the ballet. And I do like this, that he's there watching the ballet and he gets a thought in his head, he starts writing it down, and she stops him, like, focus. And so they huddle together, and they're like, there's this dude behind them who's trying to watch, and they cuddle, and he's like, trying to look. I laughed my ass out of that. That's funny. It's a very 50s joke, too, but I did think that was funny. So then he tries the next experiment. And again, this is very subtly done. If it was the Cronenberg one, it would have exploded. But he takes the cat. I don't remember the name of the cat. It's DePillo, something. Takes the cat. It's a girl, too. I didn't imagine, but puts it in the transmitter with a dish of milk and transport it. Also, the milk is gone when it transports. It's just the dish is there. And the cat is gone, but you hear meowing. Meow, 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 meow. He never does get the cat back. By the way. So then he tries to adjust, do things, and he brings his wife down to show her what he has been doing, and he does it, makes it work just fine with a bottle of wine, and it works, the writing's fine, and he tries to do it with a rat. I don't remember, does it work? That's the one part of the movie that kind of blacked out for me, is that I don't remember if it works. I think it works, because then he tries to explain that he did it with a cat, and it didn't work. And she's like, what? And everything's all funny. And then this household is a very old school household. It reminds me of Mary Poppins a lot. As you get the husband who is very into his work, the wife is not a suffragette, but she's very into, stuff. But she's very loyal to the husband, which is very 50s, which is not the, you know, which is, very loyal to the husband. And they got a housekeeper, and they got a housekeeper and a nanny or something, or a nurse. There's a nurse up there. I think it's a nurse, but that's later. And so it's very much, and there's a kid. But, so then he refuses to come out. He's been down in there. He is not coming out, and they're all supposed to go out that night, and then they find out they can't go out. Because Francois comes over and they can't go out. He's not doing good, and then when she goes down to visit him, he leaves a note saying that something has gone wrong, and she wants to come in. He says no. They work out a system though. Knock once for yes, twice for no. So, if he goes, that's it. If he goes, okay, I'll do it over here then. If he goes, it's a yes. If he goes, that's a no. So she wants to come in. No. And so, she wants to help. And so they set up this whole system where it's okay, you go up, you give me milk, you give me a bowl of milk and some rum, with some rum in it, I guess. She does that, lets her in, but he's got his head covered and one of his hands are in his pocket. And he writes about the fly. She needs to go in the other room and try to find the fly. However, once he describes what it looks like, she realizes that her boy, Philippe, had caught the fly, and she told him to let it go. He tells him that, and he's furious, and he's like, don't worry, we'll figure out a way to save you. She comes up with the idea, this case a couple of trips down there, but she comes up with the idea for him to go through the pot again. And much like in Cronenberg's, he made it worse, where here it doesn't do anything. He's still like that. Although the thing is taken off, and I do like that it's not, it's very subtle for 1950s. We build up to the reveal. You want to know what it looks like, but you don't know. When there's a part when his hand pops out, she freaks out and yells and runs away. She passes out, and he has to bring her. And I guess, his brain is deteriorating, and the instincts of the fly are starting to take over, because his one hand starts to go, and he has to pull it away and stuff, and he goes from intelligent sentences to just kind of caveman speak, or whatever. And, I do kind of like that. He's starting to devolve. So, after he freaks out, we dissolve back. After it's revealed to us what had happened, we dissolve back. No, we don't dissolve back. We see what happened. He says, you have to destroy me, writes it out to her. And she complies by putting him in the press. She presses it down once. And then she puts his hand in there, presses it down again. And they said earlier that it was pressed twice. Because apparently you press it, how many times you press put in there, and then you delete the thing. Did they have digital presses back then? I don't know how that works, but yeah. And so then we get to the end, and even more horrifying than the reveal of the man fly is the fly man. Because the story gets done, we dissolve back to present time. Or, current day. The current time, her telling the story. And they're not sure if they believe her. Charas says he doesn't believe her. And he's ready to declare her insane. But Philippe is not Philippe. Francois is not so sure. And we get this moment where he sits down on the bench, and we hear, help me, help me, help me. And he doesn't hear it though, and we see something in the corner, something crawling toward something else, right? So the cops show up with the paddy wagon ready to take her away, and he goes up and tries to reason with Stardust. But Stardust won't listen, and then the kid comes up, but they don't want him to see his mom, so Francois tries to take him away. Then the kid mentions he saw the fly again. He's like, where? Where's the fly? Which, by the way, I want to mention, I always thought that Vincent Price was British. He's just an eccentric man, I guess. But, so he tries to tell Charas that the fly is out there. It's in the garden, in a spider's web. So he takes him out there and they look at it. And it's the fly with the head of Andre in one of his arms. Help me, help me. And they just stand there as the spider gets closer and closer and closer. And I know, like, they don't have Andre's body anymore, so they can't reverse it. And he destroyed everything, by the way, I should mention. He freaks out, he destroys his machines, burns all of his notes. So no one can ever duplicate this again. This can never happen again. Because, I didn't mention this, but I shouldn't have to. When you do this experiment, a fly flew in. People might complain, oh, you didn't say how he transformed. If you don't know, I mean, come on, this is an old movie. Even fans of the Cronenberg movie would know what happened. Okay? So anyway, yes. So Charas takes a rock and he smooshes both of them, just as the spider's about to eat it. And then Charas can't believe what he saw, so he starts to reason. He goes, I suppose it could have been suicide. Suicide? But the press, he could push the press and then go underneath, right? But about how many times? Well, I suppose I could have, I could have forgotten to erase from the last time I pressed it. Trying to reason. And they can say it was suicide, so she's off the hook. And we flash to later where Francois shows up again and everything is happy. She's back to being normal. And the kid knows that his dad's dead, but he wants to know how. And he just says that, your father's death was a product of his obsession, which is true. And then they go on. The movie ends. This movie is actually better than I thought it was going to be. Because it's an old movie. It's probably going to be hokey when the other one is really sick and grounded. But it was actually very good. It was actually done very well, acted very well. I mean, there's a lot of, even the screams, when the wife screams, it's very 50s, but it works. And the reveal of the fly head and then the man fly, very good. But yes, what was it directed by? Produced and directed by Kurt Newman. Well done, sir. He's probably passed away, so may he rest in peace. I assume he passed away. So I'm going to have to say that when it comes to The Fly, it's pretty good. So what are your thoughts on The Fly? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I've been Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.